welcome to this fireside chat that we're having today with good and great folks of Suddath. So our fireside chat today, we're really going to focus on the relationship between stakeholders and really key stakeholders and the product owner, as well as the Scrum team. That will be our emphasis for today. So we have Scott Hewitt and Dan Lawrence from Suddath with us here today, and I'll just ask that they introduce themselves. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Scott.
Sure thing. Government Services Customer Experience Team.
Awesome. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
And how about you, Dan?
Thanks for having me, Quincy. I'm Dan Lawrence. I'm one of our product owners at Suddath, and I've been in our industry about 20 years. So this should be fun to have a nice conversation with Scott.
Absolutely. So for those who are listening to this fireside chat, we're really just going to have kind of an open conversation and an open dialogue about what that relationship is like. And to really get us started, there was a sprint review that we were in, and I should also introduce myself. So I am Quincy Jordan. I am Director of Innovate at AgileThought. And in particular for Suddath, I've been along with them on their Agile journey as their Senior Agile Coach, working very closely with folks like Dan and Scott and some of the other leaders, as well as some of the teams as well. And so we were in a sprint review not too long ago. And during that sprint review, there was really almost just a pause. And Scott stepped in and shared some words. I can't actually do it justice to try to repeat those words, or really almost even try to describe them. So instead of doing that, what I am going to do is actually share my screen, and I am going to play an audio excerpt from that specific sprint review so that you can hear it for yourself. It was just so moving and so impactful.
Cool. Any questions from anybody? Thanks, Tim.
Hey, Dana, can I just say something?
Sure.
Hey, I don't talk a lot on these things, believe it or not, but I do want to say, I just have to compliment you guys so much. I've never been in a position to call a BMW dealer and say, hey, I want to design my M series car now, because I've never been there. But I can imagine if I did, it would be like this. You guys are designing the best system that we could ever ask for as a business unit. And you're not only, it's like we're talking to the designers and we're saying, I'd like to have this in the car. I know the other cars don't have it, but I want it. And you guys figure this stuff out. And what you've done with the document imaging and all these things is just mind-blowing to me. So, but the biggest thing is, I'm coming from a customer service standpoint. All of you, and every one of these sprints and all of these meetings, you really set a great example for how we should treat each other, both internally at lateral conversations and meetings, but also the way we should treat our customers outside the building. I can't compliment you all of you enough to say, not only are you expert at what you do, but you really make us in the business side feel like customers. And we need to make sure we acknowledge that. And we should take these examples with us and do the same for our customers, whether they're internal or external customers. So I can't say that every week because you guys get tired of hearing it, but I think it's time you should hear that from somebody like me, because I really admire what you're doing. So great job, everybody.
Yeah, that was really well said, Scott. Thank you. I think we all appreciate that, but we're trying to produce a really good product for a really important contract. So we really appreciate. We don't get tired of hearing it. So let's.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that.
I mean, it's obvious to me it's intentional. You guys really intend on making us feel like customers, and that's going above and beyond just doing your job really well. So thanks so much for doing that.
I'm gonna just say I think these the agile method that we're doing, we're bringing you guys in every week to see what's done. You guys can tell us that no, this is not what we want. We can make changes quickly. It's so critical to the feedback is this absolute critical to this, and you guys are the perfect partners for it. Let's just.
So I thought that was so profound when I heard it. And one of the things that stood out among many, Scott, was that you mentioned that it was important for someone like you, someone in your position, to share that type of sentiment. What did you mean by that, and what were you thinking at the time?
Sure. You know, I know that at my level, sometimes, you know, we get preoccupied with a lot of different things, and we don't get a chance to really get in touch with the people who do all the work. But I also meant by that was I'm leading customer experience. You know, I'm the person that's in charge of making sure customers feel welcome and feel listened to and feel like we care. So if I can be impressed by another group that really doesn't interact with the outside customer base and be internal people. My meeting was for all of us on the business side to take note of that and make sure that we at least do as well, if not better, since we are in charge of communicating with customers. And that this was a good example, and these are good examples of how we should feel. We should make our customers feel, because that's the way these sprints and these teams make us feel like really valuable customers.
Yeah, that's just so awesome. And I think that because you're coming from a perspective of customer experience, I believe that you actually provide a level of insight or maybe a perspective that sometimes folks in the Agile community may not always see. You know, it's almost as if someone is having a medical conversation with someone who's a physician, so they know, you know, the ins and outs and so forth. So in the process of taking an Agile approach, and specifically, we're using Scrum in this instance, part of that approach involves the feedback loops. The feedback loops are extremely important. And one of the things I really appreciated and often see as interesting is when someone in your position, they reference it and they talk, like how you gave the example about the BMW. And, you know, it's as if we're, you know, ordering a BMW and we want it to look this way, and you don't actually do it, but then you go and figure it out. And I think that's so great, because you're not necessarily calling it feedback loops. You're not using the Agile jargon, but you're getting the complete spirit and sentiment of what Agile is all about. So for you, Dan, as the product owner who is the voice of the customer, you're representing the customer. What has that feedback loop meant for you in this process, specifically around your stakeholders?
I think it's really important that regardless of if they know the Agile jargon of a feedback loop, throughout this time building with Scott and the rest of his team, have started to understand that the importance of giving that feedback and being able to turn it around in 1 to 2 weeks and have a change based on that feedback is so important to see that we can move at the speed we do, but also helps me prioritize it based on just their voice, knowing how important certain aspects and challenges they face today with their current customer base. It's just as important to us that we're not facing we don't want their feedback to come back and say, well, that is going to happen 6 months from now. That can't, especially if it's a pain point that they're having that they continue to discuss. And their feedback also brings us closer to the problem that they're trying to solve, and we're all trying to solve together. So I've been in instances before where it's very silent in the feedback process, but this group knows they're also seeing the value of their feedback come to life, and I think that's really critical.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the I think key points. You know, it's similar, and I tend to use a lot of analogies and that kind of thing, but it's similar in my mind to when companies do employee surveys or, you know, those kinds of things. But if people never see action happening as a result of those surveys, then they begin to lose their weight and they begin to lose, you know, their importance. And so I think it's very critical, you know, she pointed out that you're hearing what the customer is saying, taking it in as a team, reacting to it, prioritizing, and ensuring that those things that are most important to the customer are actually making it to the team, work is being done, and then it's coming back to them to essentially say, hey, is this what you thought? Did we hit the mark? Are we on target? We're not? Okay, great. What do we need to do to change that? So for you, Scott, to have that type of feedback, and I know you expressed about the analogy with the BMW, but what does the ability to give that type of feedback do for you when you are away from the team, when you're having to make other decisions about maybe some of that information? How has that part maybe changed, or how does that look different than before going down this journey?
It's a good question. You know, trying to be in the business side of things and deal with the IT side of things can be a little intimidating. And, you know, sometimes we don't know what to ask or how to ask for it. In some scenarios, not here. You may feel a little bit out of your world and maybe even ridiculed with the question, because the punishment you get when you find out can't be done, or, you know, we don't do those things, or you didn't even ask a question that's relevant, basically. Where in these sprints in this team, these teams, you know, they never shut down the conversation. You feel like that was a dumb question, or we don't do that, any of those things. So if I'm, you know, not in one of those meetings, I know that the feeling of the meeting, because each one of Dan's people is very good at bringing out conversation, not shutting it down. So you can ask any question, not feel like it's a dumb question. We can ask a request like that BMW with that one thing that no other car has, and feel like they'd go, you know what, if we can't do it now, we're writing it down, we're going to try. It's going to be something we will attempt to do, if maybe not do at all. I mean, we will do it. It's just a matter of when, but not no or if. It's going to be just maybe not right away, but we will get to it, or we will have it happen. And what I really like about this is I can come back in after missing a couple of them, and it's almost like watching, you know, a family movie, where if I'm not part of the family and I have to sit down and watch this family movie, it gets pretty boring because I don't know who these people are. But I can come back in, and as they reveal the work they've done for that sprint, I know I was in it sometimes, I wasn't in it sometimes, but the folks that were in it were asking the right questions, getting really good responses. And here's the result of your question and our effort to provide what you asked for. And it's really like, you know, screening to a new movie. Wow, this is awesome. This is something we were really hoping for. You pulled it off, and everybody celebrates that instead of, you know, just goes, well, that was expected. No, it was something that, because you made us a part of that, and we felt engaged in it, we're celebrating your efforts too. And it was really fun to watch that happen. Now, what are we doing next week? You know, that's the way it feels all the time.
Nice. Yes. Maybe we can introduce the Suddath reviews for Sundance Festival, and You know?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we
Ye-
look forward to it too. That's the whole thing, is that the level of excitement that you guys bring at the end of it, that we're even the smallest change can make huge business impact. And then it gets us so ready for that next sprint that right after our reviews, we're going right into planning, and the team is just charging ahead for the rest of that day. So it's the excitement it brings for everybody makes us want to solve the problems that you guys want to solve.
And you see even in the moment, not everybody's speaking, but you see hands clapping, you see chatting going on, saying thank you, great job. So there's so much other feedback that's happening while there's the show and tell, that it just gets infectious. And I know there are people on these calls that will never talk in other meetings. They just don't. But here, I think is important, and they may or may feel like that is important. So that's a really important thing for the tech side of things to be able to do to the business side, to make them feel like, hey, you're everything you say is important to us, not just the stuff we think we can do, but everything, even if sometimes it may not sound like it's that important to us. We believe it's important, and you're always welcome to say those things. That is so critical. I just can't tell you how important that is.
Yeah, one of the things that is more and more evident to me as I hear the two of you talk, and just the things that I've witnessed myself, is one of the things that has been so impactful and critical is the thing that you don't see, but you see it at the same time, and that's transparency. So the transparency there between business and IT really working collaboratively, together as a team. And I'll tell you, Scott, I think it's safe to say that most folks on the IT side, especially at the team level, would never think that someone on the business side, someone like yourself, would have any level of possibly feeling intimidated by the team at all, like afraid to ask a question. And it's so interesting because it almost reminds me of like kids and dating, where both sides are afraid to to say something, and they think the other person is, like that whole thing. But that level of transparency, I think is just really, really important. I'm glad to hear it, glad to see it at the same time. So, Scott, one of the other things I wanted to maybe dig in a little bit more around on the business side and some of that feedback loop, and without going into details. So you mentioned, there's some folks on other meetings like they'll never talk, but in this meeting they do. How has it changed, or has it changed the conversation on the business side with your peers and away from the team? Has it changed that conversation at all around how working this way has been helpful? Has there been anything there?
I think within my group, that my direct reports, and one of the people that I work closely with, even though she's not now my direct report, is Stacy Warner, and she's very aware of how this process is. On the business side, we're not used to different environment of just meetings and going away with to-dos and coming back and reporting what you did, and trying to keep up with the information flow back and forth. But it isn't agile. It's very linear and very stagnant, in my opinion. So there's a leader that tells the group what's needed, what they need, and then they go out and they come back with the information or the project, and they report on it. But there's no lateral conversation really in most business meetings. So I think the environment where the agile leaders that under Dan that lead that area they're in, they're not just good at what they do, they're good at drawing out comfortability with people where they are willing to get people to talk and let those people talk. And, you know, when you're in a meeting with 10, 12 people, you're on stage and you just don't want to be made a fool of. So you don't talk if you're not confident. Those folks are very good at making sure everybody feels very comfortable. So even if they don't get it right, you know, they're not going to feel like they made a fool of themselves in front of everybody. And on the business side of meetings, generally there's a leader, and then there's people in that meeting that have to listen and follow. And I will say SGS, compared to other places I've been in this business 43 years now. SGS is very good at getting a dialogue going in the business side, even if it's not agile style or with the IT folks. We're very good at dialogue, and we're very good at being open and being able to feel comfortable to talk, but not to this degree, because there's a methodology behind this, and there's really not in the other. And I will say, in other companies, there's not anything even close to this. It's really it's a direct down type of environment where it's a one-way conversation and a list of things to do and then get back to me kind of thing. So this environment is really listening to me. Everybody's equal. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has input. Every thought is valued, and every thought that's uttered out gets a response. It's not like you're ignored if you didn't ask something, you know, that was valuable. Everybody gets a response, and that's really important.
Wow. So, Dan, that causes me to want to look at it from the Scrum team side, you know, as well. So we're hearing some of the things from Scott on the business side, and this is, in my mind, it's the different sides to one big team. So not, you know, silos, but just really just one big team. And so, Dan, the Scrum team, how much of a difference would you say it's made for the team to have that type of feedback in terms of making progress with developing a product, but also to have the type of feedback that showed the sentiment that Scott has expressed, that type of feedback as well?
Well, I think, just in like mind to what Scott was saying, excuse me, the level of feedback is so critical for the level of feedback they're getting, meaning that not just the business side voice matters, we also empower our devs to make sure their voice matters. And that's so critical, that we bring them closer to the problem. And when we're solving these things, they're not just taking my direction to say, I want you to do it this way, and this is the way you have to do it. So there's a couple sides to that. The feedback for them, whether it's what Scott compared to the BMW, that is you know, jokingly, when do they get their BMWs? You know, for all the work they put in and all the effort. But also hearing the feedback lets them hear the layers of, sometimes Scott doesn't work on the front lines every day. He doesn't hear what issues we have with, you know, integrated documentation or dropped communication calls with our, you know, call center technology. He does, but he sees it sometimes at a higher level. But hearing it from the people that are actually making those calls with our customers allows our guys to also say, why are we doing this now, or why are we doing it this way? And we encourage, I think with the Scrum methodology, is that there is no leader, you know, there is no boss in that manner. It's everybody has a voice equal across the team. And I might set the priority as a product owner, and I might communicate that with Scott and his team, that this is why we're going in this direction first. But, you know, you guys have to know that, you know, the development team behind me is also giving their input on some of those things. And because we do smaller sessions with them, you know, we don't silo anybody on our team. And we may grab somebody from the business that Scott may not even know about. Like, I'll just grab somebody off the floor that I know is really really in on that problem or that situation, and we'll see what they're doing and sit over their shoulder. So I think we get feedback in a lot of different ways that sometimes Scott doesn't see, but it comes out in the product we're delivering. But it also, it's BAs or Scrum Masters or our QA team has stepped up massive. I mean, and we watch them take that to the next level because our QA team now knows exactly how the business uses our software today. Like, Scott, we could hire them to move people later on if we're done. and and I think that's the ultimate goal, is that our industry is a very hard industry, and our partners, i.e. Scott and the rest of the SGS team, they go through a lot every day on the front lines with just our customers. And having internal customers or internal teams helping them running into roadblocks internally, we're never going to get anything done. We have to have this level of trust between each other that half of Scott's team was just getting yelled at on the phone because of something. They don't need to have any issues with us. So the more we can keep transparent and ahead of it, the easier it is for us to deliver what they need and not over what they need.
So with that being said, and as you said, it's essentially you succeed as a team or you fail as a team. It's one team, and you are collaboratively making decisions, but at the same time, as the product owner, the onus is on you to manage the product backlog. What has the experience been like setting expectations or managing expectations with the stakeholders like the Scotts of the world, with maybe some technical conflicts that you have to work through that may impact some of those expectations? I mean, that's a real thing that does happen.
It's a good question. I mean, some of it has been, we're not there yet. Like, there's a joke that we should get me a T-shirt that says, "We're not there yet." So Scott, we're just not there yet. But some of it is, we'll take that feedback and we'll do the research to make sure that we're coming back with the right question. And that could take 3 or 4 sprints. That could take 5 sprints. There's never a no. It's and frankly, I don't think we run into too much technical discussion around it. I don't think, Scott, right? I mean, I don't tend to get into the technical part of it, except for when we know it's not something we've ever done at Suddath. So we'll be very upfront and transparent to say, we're going to have to research on this thing, whatever that thing is that we gotta, and we'll time box that and come back and give them an assessment. But I think building the trust has been around really just staying 100% transparent with the team that we can or we cannot do it, and not becoming order takers, but showing why we can't or we should. Which way do we go? I mean, that's a hard question, but I think it's just evolved as we've come from a very waterfall life cycle of, here's some requirements, go build it, and we bring it back to Scott, and it's not anything what they expected. And now they're getting what they expect because it is seen as a partnership versus a IT versus the business.
Yeah, and I would say, in my experience, people they're disappointed when they don't get what they want, but they're very upset when they don't get what they expect. And so managing those expectations are, very important, completely critical. The level of transparency and frequent communication is, I believe, paramount. That has been instrumental. So for you, Scott, from a standpoint of expectations being met or expectations being delayed, how has that sat with you? How has that been different from the old waterfall world? Because I'll tell you, I've seen many clients in the past where the business doesn't want to hear it, like at all. They just want to know that you went to the other side of the wall and built the thing that I told you to build, and that's it, and bring it back. Uh, and it's not very healthy, when that happens. But how has delayed expectations or having those expectations met, and in some cases, as I said, delayed, how has that sat with you, and what has that experience been like?
Sure, great question too. And I'll speak for me. I can't speak for every other leader that is not as deep into the daily activities. But for me, there's a couple key things that are important. One is that we're working with Dan, who has many, many years of experience in our side of the business. So he understands the moving and storage business, leadership role that are much more attuned to what we do from the business side than in other organizations where when I worked with IT, I worked with IT people. They didn't really understand our side of the business. So there's a high level of confidence that if we can't get something done, it's not because they don't understand what I'm asking or we're asking for, or they don't really want to do it. It's because it really can't be done. And we know that we have financial constraints sometimes, or we know we have some time or labor constraints where even though we'd love to have something, we can't have it when we want it. But they've had so many times where we've asked little things that maybe to somebody a radio button on a certain page doesn't mean that much, but to us, it's a manual labor effort that we don't have to do 100 times a day. That saves hours a month by employees not having to do something manual anymore. So when you can pull off 3 or 4 of those in a sprint, then the one that you can't do, that's okay. We got 4 out of 5. I mean, we're very happy. We're feeling really excited that we're getting this BMW, so it's rare that we don't get what we need. We're already excited for this product that we've never had before. So you couple that with the experience level of the business side in the IT group, it makes us feel very welcome, that very grateful that we are able to get most of what we asked for either on or before we even expected some. There are many times we've been given something that we didn't even think we could get. We didn't even ask for it. It was just kind of came as a product of, okay, well, while we were doing this, we said, would you like this too? And when we showed it to you, we were floored in the business side. And wow, I wouldn't even thought you could do that or ask for that. That's awesome. So we're getting surprised occasionally too with some things. And I think that's because Dan and his team understand that, that would be valuable to them. And they didn't even know to ask for that. But I know what their people do on a daily basis. And we want to be more efficient. We want to use the technology to substitute for this human labor if we can.
Yeah, walking that tightrope, if you will, as a product owner, to the expectations and the knowledge, industry knowledge of the customer, and then being able to empathize and understand what the IT, what the devs, QA, and so forth, any of the limitations that they're working with, or any of the guardrails that they have to attend to. Walking that tightrope is not always the easiest thing. It's not. And it just goes to show how important it is for the product owner to have that knowledge base of the industry that the customer is in, to really be able to aspects and empathize with the IT team or the dev team and so forth as well. So that definitely just continues to speak volumes on it. So in the Agile community, we are very big on, as we said, feedback, transparency, seeing things retrospectively. So we know it can't always be all good, right? Or is it? So what are the things that you would say, all these things have been great, but you know what? Maybe these one or two things, oh, it would just make it so much better, because we're all about continuous improvement as well. So is there anything for either of you, Dan or Scott, that stands out in that way that you would say, yeah, you know what, I do think if this particular part or that particular part was different, that would make our experience just that much better?
Well, I think that's a hard question too, because, as Scott says, I've been on both sides of the team here. And, and frankly, and I said it in that video, that we can't ask for better partners. I've had, I've been in the industry, but I've been on the technology side in this industry for a long time. And whether it's in this organization or other organizations, it's hard to find. There's always things you can work on together as a team, right? And trying to retro even our relationship is something that I've worked on individually with certain stakeholders. Not actually, never had to do it with Scott, but how do we make it easier for our teams to work together? How do we do those things? And we haven't had to have that issue yet. I think that we still have a long way to go in this process. And I think as long as we're communicating now, that there's going to be things that we just couldn't get done, or the expectation fell a little short. But I think the communication of knowing that ahead of time, that we're going to run into things that aren't as good as we wanted it to be. And knowing that up front is, our motto a lot of the times is make it work, make it better, right? So make it work the way they expect, and then continue to iterate and make it better as we go. And so at this moment, I don't think there's anything that I think that actually having a retro that's business and, maybe it's product owner BAs and, Scrum Master in those every quarter or something might not be a bad idea. Because this project's only going to keep growing legs and getting bigger. And, technology is not there to replace the human labor. We are a customer service organization. That is our job, is to manage moves around the world. And moving is hard. It is really hard. And it's very stressful on the people that we're moving around the world. And the more time we can spend in front of those customers, giving them, the best tools, the technology should just work for Scott and his team. And I think as we continue to evolve it by having these open dialogues. So I'm looking forward to hear Scott tell us all the things we could be doing better. because I'm going to turn around and bring it right back to the team and say, look what Scott said. We did all this good, but we should work on this too. And our guys will take it seriously. Guys, girls, the guys, not just guys.
Well said. And I don't know if I can come up with anything that you really need to do differently, because, we all don't have enough time on our schedules to have more meetings about things. But you guys have done a really good job to keep them short, keep them all in one day, so we can plan the other 4 days around other business requirements that have nothing to do with the sprints and the IT world. So I can't say that you should do anything there, because I think you've done the best you can do with the time we have and the people we have available. We're used to working with 2 or 3 or 4 different systems that don't talk to each other. So just the idea that we can have everything in one screen, one window pane, one windshield, whatever you call it, where our work can be done without jumping in and out of different systems, being trained, to different systems that we have to know. And if we hire somebody new, they have to learn 3 or 4 different systems. Now they can learn. This is just all such good news to us. We feel pretty spoiled. It's kind of like, going from the JV team with some pads, shoulder pads from that guy, and knee pads from that guy. Now suddenly you're on the varsity team and these are your pads and they fit you, you know, and it's, you just feel like, wow, I can't wait to put this thing on and use it. So right now, it's really hard to give you any feedback that would say, if you did this, it would be light years better. I also agree with you. The real test is once we go live and, you know, it doesn't work perfectly and it won't. And how will our temperaments, how will our feedback, how will our, you know, our openness, you know, suit each other then? And I think it will do well because of all of this upfront. We're compadres now, you know, it's not IT and business, it's we're in this together. So when it doesn't work, we're going to care as much about each other as when it is working. So, but we are going to face some headwinds, I'm sure. It's going to be really hard the first 12 months to, you know, adapt systems we buy off the shelf and API in, or learn the system that you're building and hire hundreds of people that we don't even know today to try to learn our culture and keep them, you know, engaged with your team when they don't know you and your team. So it'll be daunting, but I think this foundation is really set up well to help us get through it. And I can't think of a better way to do it. And I can't give any constructive criticism to change anything. It works right now.
Awesome. Well said, Dan and Scott. Hey, we really appreciate the opportunity to have sat down and have this discussion, this dialogue. I think it was really good, very informational, very transparent, which I know folks always appreciate. And so I can't thank you enough, but I'll do what I can and just say thank you on behalf of myself and on behalf of AgileThought. I've been very excited the entire time being along this journey with you all and partnering with you all. So it's been a great experience for me as well. So thank you very much. And thank you, audience, for attending today's fireside chat. And we look forward to bringing more great dialogue and conversations that will not only share the experiences of the great folks like at Suddath, but those things that will help to improve the overall industry and the overall market. So thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lindsay.
Have a great day.
All righty. Thanks.